Hello, friends. I have a question for you today. Please let me know what greatly influenced your perceptions of other dimensions and consciousness. Tell me whether it's your cultural beliefs, family stories, or media, horror movies, or other episodes. So please post your ideas on what influenced your thoughts the most in the comment section. And welcome to the Mind Maverick Rosalind Bosco. Today we are going to look at the second episode of Seth Speaks and the Seth material. So let me begin. So we are going to continue with the first chapter. Those who have not uh, listened to my previous video, kindly go back and listen to the first video for you to get more understanding on the topic which we are discussing today. And to introduce Seth to you, Seth is an entity from another dimension who contacted Jane Roberts and downloaded a lot of information which she shared in a book called Seth Speaks and some more books. So let us start today. Today the topic is that we are multi-dimensional beings. So Seth begins by saying that our physical self is just a fragment, a very small part of our true selves. Our senses delude us into believing, looking at the outside of an object while negotiating the inside. So we are essentially deluded into believing that the outside is what is true rather than looking at the inside. So we know that this is very much true, and we even have an adage which goes like this: appearances are deceptive. So, but according to Seth, where does consciousness exist? He says that consciousness exists everywhere. So even in the most unlikeliest of places, like for example, he gives an example and says consciousness exists even within a nail, but we are not aware of it. The atoms and molecules within the nail have their own consciousness. Nothing, whether it is a rock or a mineral or air, exists without consciousness. Now, these are the same things that are being asserted by near-death experiencers, my dear friends. Some of them say that they have spent lifetime as rocks or other minerals or other such kinds of consciousness. Every one of our cells in our body is filled with consciousness, and everything is conscious. Every atom is conscious, every cell is conscious, and they also realize their role in constituting and the role they play in being a part of our human body. There is nothing which is dead in this universe. Everything is a part of source energy. There are no limitations to the self. That is why even in the Bible, Jesus says that we can do all that he was able to do. Probably Jesus was talking about true consciousness, because Christ's consciousness was the highest of all that we know currently. Our identity does not end with our current physical self. We need to pay a special kind of attention to realize our inner higher self. So it's not easy to identify the inner or the higher self, because we are, as Seth says, always deluded by through our physical senses. Seth proclaims the ego as a jealous god which is comfortable with only what it understands. So Seth blames the ego as preventing us from understanding our true identity. He calls it a jealous god. It was meant to be an aid to help us, but it has now become a tyrant, according to Seth. It prefers to keep us content with what we believe we know. But at the same time, Seth also says that if we are vigilant and if we have the urge to know more, then the ego can be our best aid in trying to understand more. So, the ego is of great value in understanding the bigger portion of our reality. Seth explains that Jane's consciousness is not erased while he is downloading the information or while he is projecting the information, but rather it is enlarged to accommodate something more than the physical three-dimensional system. More has been added to the consciousness of Jane Roberts so that she can understand and share more. So, Seth here talks about human language. He says that human language has its limitations in understanding because its development is linear. He says that Jane, who he usually addresses as Roberts, has some perceptive, she has some special perceptive parts which are transparent enough to receive all his information. But neither he nor Jane are a part of one another's subconscious. This is only a temporary arrangement. And it is because of her receptivity that Jane is able to share, and her transparency. Probably what he meant was authenticity, because these days we hear a lot of authenticity from a lot about authenticity from near-death experiences. Seth explains that he was communicating through a dimensional warp. Just imagine, friends, all these concepts in the 1970s is totally unimaginable. Now we are talking about wormholes and tunnels and warps, time warps, just now after quantum physics entered the picture. But then imagine Seth talking about a time warp in the 1970s, which has been recorded through the books of Jane Roberts. So he says that he used this psychological warp in our space and time to convey his message. It is very fascinating to hear Seth speak about these concepts even in the 1970s. So then Seth goes on to speak about his current reality and the kind of dimension in which he lives or which he inhabits. He explains that his present is as vivid and vital as a physical dimension. So sometimes we hear near-death experiencers say that as soon as their consciousness escaped their bodies, their physical bodies, they entered into a very beautiful and vital gardens and flowers with more colors that we can find on Earth. So this has been validated by Seth even at that time. It is more pleasurable. He says that it is more pleasurable, though he says that pleasure in his dimension cannot be equated to physical pleasures. So we have our own ideas of physical pleasures, but then he says that the pleasures in his dimension are somewhat different from what we experience in our earthly realm. But it is definitely more rewarding. He shares with us that it's definitely very, very rewarding. The non-physical consciousness does not reside in one particular realm. So maybe he says it's definitely rewarding, much more rewarding, because we in this physical realm are tied down to our bodies and we are restrained by our bodies. But in the non-physical realm, they have perfect liberty to visit different realms. And there is no need for Seth to reside in one particular realm. He also informs the reader that a person must have been dead many times to reach the particular realm that he resides in. So Seth must be really residing in a very elevated state of dimension or consciousness. So he says that a person must have incarnated many times to reach that particular dimension which he resides in at that point of time. So some people do not even realize their death, according to Seth, and this has been proved by near-death experiences. Some do not know that they have transitioned from their physical state into another consciousness. This might be because of sudden deaths or accidents or catastrophes of these kinds. Seth now talks about his work. He says that his work includes manipulation and creation at a very challenging level. So we need not think that this consciousness, which lives at a different state or in a different realm, spend their time in music and enjoyment and relaxation without doing anything. We have heard near-death experiences say about a council of elders who assisted them, who gave them inputs, who were with them during their life review. And this seems to be what Seth is talking about. So, all reality is created by consciousness. I have already spoken about this, and consciousness creates forms. It's only consciousness that creates forms, and it's not the other way around. So this makes a lot of sense, and his concept of space and time is totally different, and his environment. So how does creation happen at that level? Creation happens through imagination and visualization. So Seth says that they are able to create their reality, and according to their moods or according to their requirements, and they just create the reality that they like. And these are non-permanent structures, as we find in our earthly dimensions, because when there are solid structures, they are also bound to be destroyed. So we think that solid structures are very, very permanent, and these are the only kind of structures that can exist. But in these other dimensions, there are all structures are impermanent. So they can just be created, and they can just be changed according to telepathy or through electromagnetic waves of the mind of these particular consciousness. So he says that objects are manifestations of his psychological and psychic self. He has a choice of creating night or day, or choose to live in any period of history. And so, since they don't have, they are not restrained to a particular framework of time, Seth says that he can visit any point of history, and he can learn or create something or teach in that particular point of time. Now, again, I quote the near-death experiences who say that they are able to see themselves. They were able to see themselves in their near-death experiences, inhabiting different timelines. So we hear of all these only recently, but it is so fantastic to learn it through Seth, even in the 1970s, my friends. So Seth says that he was a teacher, basically. And he also says that changing forms and impermanence are a part of his dimension. So the consciousness in that particular dimension can just change forms as they like. Seth calls himself a teacher who loves to use creative methods to teach. And in his communication with Jane, he says that he has used only a minuscule part of his total essence or identity. And he can choose. And the next point is about gender. What gender is there a gender difference in these kinds of, among these different kinds of consciousness? Seth says that the gender of any consciousness can prefer to choose whatever gender it prefers according to its needs at that particular point of time. So choice of form or gender rests on inner thoughts and specific chemical reactions and the requirements of the situation in his dimension. We can choose to project our form while we are asleep in another place. Seth says that even human beings, while we are asleep, we can choose to project our forms in another dimension, another place. Probably this explains all the dreams we have when we sleep. So Seth also says that these consciousness are able to appear at different places at different times at the same time. So even in the earthly dimension, we know of very special people like saints, like saints like Padre Pio, who were able to, and even some Indian and other saints who were able to appear or translocate in different places at the same time. And they create forms with awareness, and they can connect telepathically without the use of human language. These consciousness do not communicate through human language, but they communicate through electromagnetic energy. Now, again, forgive me for stressing this point again and again. So, only quantum physics is talking about electromagnetic energy at this point of time, which was totally unimaginable in the 1970s. And Seth has passed on all this information, has given all this information to Jane Roberts, even at that point of time, which is really wonderful. And Seth says that emotional intensity is very, very important, and it is foundational in or the building material of his creativity and consciousness at that level. And the use of emotions at their level is different from ours. But Seth advocates that they use emotions in the right way. So sometimes we do not use emotions in the right way, which results in conflict. But these consciousness have a, have elevated themselves to such maturity that they can communicate at their emotions in a very loving manner. They are not afraid of emotions, and Seth says that control of emotions is not preferred, but only the right way of communication of emotions is very important or vital. And next, Seth talks about the concept of time. And he says that multi-dimensional beings adapt according to various realities. Time has no meaning to them, but they take cognizance of time in other dimensions. Now, what does it mean? Supposing they have to appear in our dreams, they have to take cognizance of our time. But for their convenience, they can create in their reality, they can create their own time and or whatever they require. But there is no need for time in their reality, but they have to take cognizance of time in the other dimensions or places they visit. So they exist in other dimensions as well. Just like us, we also exist in other dimensions. Only a small fragment of ourselves exists in this particular dimension. And that is why Seth says that we are also multidimensional beings. So Seth calls his reality as a moment point. Everything happens at this moment point of time. So probably we can equate it with what we call the now. And Seth, in his language, he used a concept called the moment point, in which everything happened in that particular point, and there was no linear time or progressive time. So Seth explains that he has to just think of a person. He also speaks of his other gifts that he has in that particular state of consciousness. He has to just think of a person, and all the details that he needed, the past, present, and the motivations, the aspirations of that particular person would be immediately revealed. He can also travel with that person in in all their experiences. So next, I would like to say one other important and very fascinating detail which I found. Seth also talks about relaxations or taking a vacation. Now, we know that these consciousness are always doing something creative, and they are teachers as experienced by near-death experiencers. But when everything becomes too much for them, just like us, so when they need a relaxation or a vacation, what do these consciousness do? Where do they go? Seth says that for relaxation, if they need a small relaxation, they visit simple life forms like a rock or a tree and blend with these simple life forms. And they could spend even a century as a tree as an uncomplicated form in another reality. I hope you found my material today good, friends. So I started from a portion of the first chapter, and then I continued to the second chapter. So please post your comments about all these materials and whether you have read this. And if you are interested, please buy a copy of the book, and you can do your own reading and read my books on Amazon: Co-Create with Your Universe, Highlights of A Course in Miracles, God Has Our Backs, and the Brimstone Fallacy. And subscribe to me on YouTube. And I expect your comments and your questions in the comment section. This subscribe to me on YouTube, and this is Rosalind Bosco, the Mind Maverick, signing off. Thank you until we meet next time with the Seth material.